Within the past few days, something rather interesting has happened in both the UK and Australia. Two countries fighting the impacts of what's popularly known today as UKification. A loss of culture, a loss of confidence in its own history and values, and bending over to the demands of thousands, if not millions of Muslim immigrants into these countries in the past few decades. In many ways, you've got to hand it to both of these countries. This happened because of genuine empathy and a desire to help people, but both turned out to be naive enough that leaders for years believed you could import millions of people from fundamentally different cultures. They refused to demand assimilation, and more recently, they both started silencing anyone who objected. And of course, both countries assumed they would still remain the same country after all of this. History, it turns out, doesn't work like that. And after many long years, the tide is finally turning. The lies have stopped working, and this week, the backlash has become reality, with Restore Britain officially launching in the UK and in Australia, where the Liberals have unveiled outright bans on entire countries. Let's start with Britain. Rupert Lowe launched the Restore Britain party a few days ago, and nothing defines their policies more than their immigration policies. It is, in my opinion, rather expectedly, an almost equal pushback to a system that is fundamentally broken right now. Lowe has been unusually explicit about what their policies actually mean. In his own words, we will not just stop mass immigration, we will reverse it. Illegals, gone. And he doesn't mean future arrivals only. Restore Britain's position is retrospective. Anyone who entered the UK illegally, including those who arrived by small boat and were later granted refugee status, would be removed regardless of their current legal standing. This is rather different because Britain's asylum system has quietly reclassified tens of thousands of illegal entrants as legitimate residents over the past decade. Many now have full access to social housing, welfare, the NHS, and schools. And based on available data, asylum seekers cost the British taxpayer £15 billion a year. Restore Britain's view is blunt. Legalisation after the fact does not make the original entry legitimate, and the system has been gamed. This is not a fringe concern. Estimates suggest Britain is home to somewhere between 800,000 and over 1 million illegal migrants, while removals in a record year barely crossed 16,000. The gap between enforcement and reality is enormous. Restore Britain exists because people have noticed. Side note, if you're enjoying the video and the channel so far, please remember to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. This channel is entirely fan supported, so if you want to support the work and the mission behind it, consider joining Patreon and becoming part of that. That's what keeps the channel alive, lets me do more of this, and it also gets you early access, longer and uncensored videos, written articles, and access to member-only chats. What I think is even more interesting is what Rupert Lowe said on X right after this part on illegal immigration. He declares legal migration a far bigger issue. In fact, let's see exactly what he said. If a foreign national is unable to speak English, they will go home. If a foreign national fails to support themselves financially, they will go home. If a foreign national is living on benefits, they will go home. If a foreign national is living in social housing, they will go home. If a foreign national hates our way of life, they will go home. If a foreign national aims to implement Sharia law or politicize radical Islam in Britain, they will go home. Foreign criminals will be ejected before their feet can touch the ground. What happens to them on return to their own country is not our problem. I really don't care. As a political party, Restore Britain will be unapologetic in our pursuit of deportations. Once again, it sounds harsh, but I think this is to be expected. If immigration, even on the legal side, has gone so far on the other end, where a country like Britain is bringing in sex pests, say from some of the worst places in the world, honestly, how is that any better than illegal immigration? There are no benefits to this. In fact, there are a lot of tangible adverse impacts on broader society. We have all seen what the grooming gangs have done, right? Restore Britain is also promising to end welfare benefits for all foreign nationals. It's absurd that anyone who's foreign even receives benefits to begin with. In fact, stories like the one where this Afghan, after someone, immediately went and bought snacks with a government-issued welfare card should disgust you. That's just one story. There are hundreds, if not thousands, just like this. And I would say for many years, people almost certainly have felt like the people in charge had no interest in changing anything. Those incidents, as London's mayor would put it, became part and parcel of living in these cities. Legal migration was always sold as something the state could manage. that it would be selective, that it would serve the country, and that mistakes could be corrected. Instead, it hardened into something politically untouchable. Once someone was admitted, their presence became effectively permanent, and any attempt to question outcomes was treated as immoral rather than practical. It's also hard not to notice the rather obvious. Rupert Lowe is targeting what is perhaps a rather taboo subject. That, of course, is Islam. He goes further, promising to ban halal and kosher slaughter practices if elected. Don't need to guess where I stand on that either. But we know this is largely going to impact legal and illegal immigrants to Britain from Muslim countries, those who are gaming the system and those who per capita commit the worst crimes imaginable. And this is where Australia enters the picture. For years, Australians were told their system was different, that we had strong borders, that mistakes made in Europe could never happen here. And for a while, that was mostly true. But somewhere along the line, immigration stopped being a national policy and turned into an economic crutch. Population growth became the substitute for productivity. Visa numbers replaced reform. And anyone who raised concerns was dismissed as, well, racist. It didn't matter whether you were white, black, or blue. Nobody apparently had the right to point out the country's immigration system was broken. That illusion, I think, finally shattered 2 months ago after Australia witnessed the worst terror attack in its history. 15 people lost their lives to Islamic terrorists. Initially, there was a lot of anger, and I guess a lot of people asking how this could have possibly happened. But soon enough, the picture became rather clear. Australia had a massive fifth column, deeply ingrained into its suburbs, and both major parties had generally failed to address the taboo topic Rupert Lowe dares mention, Islam. Suddenly, we saw the unprecedented rise in Australia's own right-wing populist party in One Nation. It had a well-known figurehead in Pauline Hanson, and once that started to happen, all bets were off. The legacy Conservative Party was on notice. Perhaps it's only when such a party is facing political extinction that they kick into fifth gear. And this week, we saw the very first glimpse of exactly that happening. Leaked documents reveal that the Liberal Party had developed plans for explicit country and region-based immigration bans tied to terrorism risk and so-called values compliance. Well, we know what they all mean by incompatible values. Just Islam, honestly. Let's be real here. The reason why even political parties in Australia and in Britain aren't able to speak freely is because they themselves have been passing laws to stifle what can be said online. Say the wrong thing, and you may expect police at your door. That's exactly why I use Proton VPN and why I think you should too. They're based in Switzerland, outside the reach of US, EU, UK, and Australian law. They don't keep logs and are built by the same team behind Proton Mail. When the UK passed its surveillance laws, Proton VPN became the #1 app on the App Store. Their stealth protocol beats censorship firewalls. Secure Core routes your traffic through privacy-first countries, and NetShield blocks trackers before they ever reach you. I've used Proton Mail since Australia announced sweeping surveillance laws last year, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it's now essential. If you want to protect your privacy and support this channel, hit the link below to get up to 60% off Proton VPN. The proposal, referred to internally as Operation Gatekeeper, outlined visa bans covering regions across more than a dozen countries. Areas defined by terror group activity, radicalization risk, and chronic instability. The logic was simple and politically explosive. If certain regions consistently export violence, extremism, or sectarian conflict, then the cost of pretending otherwise is too high. On top of the pressure the Liberal Party is facing from the rise of One Nation, who are now consistently outpolling them, it's clear the mainstream Conservative Party can no longer look away. Their somewhat socially progressive, fiscally conservative members might have distanced themselves from this, but this doesn't mean the pressure doesn't exist. It exists in a rather specific form too. Australia is running one of the highest per capita migration intakes in the developed world during a housing crisis, a rental crisis, and a cost of living crisis. Infrastructure hasn't kept up, wages haven't kept up, social cohesion clearly hasn't kept up, and increasingly, neither has patience. This is why the conversation has shifted from numbers to conditions. The Australian debate is no longer just about how many people come in, but about who stays and under what terms. The leaked plan explicitly discussed turning Australia's values statement into a binding condition, meaning breach the values, lose the visa. That's genuinely a profound shift, because for decades, Australian migration operated on an unspoken rule. Once you're in, you're basically in for good. deportation was rare. Look at this Sudanese neurosurgeon whom the judge called a fine young man after committing a crime that would send the average person to jail for far longer. Or this other astrophysicist who claimed a metaphysical transformation into becoming Aboriginal to prevent being deported. We are all getting taken for a ride by some of the worst criminals and the institutions who are in charge of punishing them. But it looks like that's now changing. So what about one nation that have been openly saying what others wouldn't? Hard caps, mass removals, withdrawals from international refugee frameworks, explicit bans on migration from Muslim-majority countries, and very importantly, especially today, calling out Islam.
Shari, we're in a situation now in Australia where you can either go down one path and we will reap the rewards of our tough stance against Islam and the radicalisation that we will be facing. Or if we open up the borders and allow more into the country, we're going to suffer. Future generations will, as other countries have, like France and Denmark and England and all these other countries and Canada, all these ones who thought, oh, well, we'll welcome them. I tell you what, I've got no time for the radical Islam. Their religion concerns me because what it says in the Quran, they hate Westerners. And that's what it's all about.
Their policies are blunt, sometimes crude, but politically effective because they reflect something many voters already believe, that the system is being abused and no one in power is serious about stopping it. Now, of course, these sound pretty good on paper. These parties can make these policies part of their policy plan, but saying it is one thing, actually doing it is another entirely. Both Britain and Australia are about to collide with the same wall: institutional resistance. You've got courts, bureaucracies, activist NGOs, international law, media, and entire sections of the civil service that have spent decades entrenching the very system these parties are now trying to unwind. In Britain, any attempt at mass deportations or retrospective removals will immediately run into human rights law, judicial review, and endless legal obstruction. NGOs will litigate relentlessly, activist judges will reinterpret obligations expansively, and enforcement agencies, already understaffed and demoralized, will be asked to do something they were never designed to do at scale: reverse migration rather than manage it. Australia faces the same problem. The legal framework here was built to process visas, not revoke them. Deportation powers exist, but they have been used sparingly and often inconsistently. Remember, the government has deported 0 Islamic extremists since the Bondi attack. The institutions will also inevitably do everything in their power to try and stop anyone who tries this. Appeals, injunctions, claims of discrimination. And that's before you even get to the internal sabotage that inevitably follows when parts of the bureaucracy simply refuse to cooperate. We have all seen the US reaction to ICE enforcing deportation orders, often to criminals, right? That will be the biggest challenge both Britain and Australia are going to face, and that's assuming either of these parties actually win elections. Restore Britain, One Nation, and even the Liberals in Australia are facing a very tough path ahead. They are symptoms of countries that have undergone enormous change and have slowly learned that mercy to the wolf is cruelty to the flock.
In the neon haze of a broken dawn, steel towers hum, but the wild runs on. A shadow moves through the circus below, half machine, half